You were formed in sacred silence. Hands of heaven shaped your frame. Breathed alive.
Have you
by
ever
love
wondered what it
eternal,
means to
long
live with
before
both
you
greatness
earned a
and brokenness
name? Not a
at the same
flaw,
time?
not a burden,
To be
not
called
a rose to
chosen,
keep
even
you wrong.
celebrated,
You're the
and yet
image
still
of the
fall,
maker.
still
All his beauty
fail,
can be
still
found.
question your worth. Let me introduce you to someone who knew that tension better than most. And that person is David, the shepherd boy who became a king, the warrior who wrote poetry, the leader who danced before God, and later collapsed under the weight of his own mistakes. And yet, God called him a man after his own heart. Think about that. Not a man without flaws, not a man with a perfect record, but a man whose identity was rooted not in perfection, but in a relationship. Relationship with God. Welcome to Dignity Talks YouTube channel. My name is Ritva Huusko. I'm a psychotherapist from Finland with a deep passion for exploring human well-being through both psychological insight and biblical wisdom. On this channel, we dive into topics that matter: healing, hope, emotional growth, faith, and the dignity of being human. My goal is to create a space where your heart, your mind, and your spirit are all equally welcome. Whether you're curious about how faith and psychology connect, or you're simply seeking encouragement on your journey, you're in the right place. So make yourself at home, and if this sounds like something your soul needs, I warmly invite you to subscribe and join our growing community. Let's walk this meaningful path together. David's life was a whirlwind of glory and grief, triumph and failure, divine calling and human weakness. And yet, through it all, one truth remained. David never lost sight of who he belonged to. He may have stumbled, he may have sinned, but he always came back. He always came back to Lord. He wrote songs in caves. He wept in palaces. He faced giants and his own guilt. And in every season, he returned to this one anchor. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. Let's sit today with his story. Let's look at how David understood dignity, not as something you earn, but something you've given. Not as a bride, but as presence. Not from what the world say about him, but from who God said he was. Because if David, a man of contradictions, could live as a God's beloved, so we can too. Let's begin. David was the youngest in the family, so overlooked, in fact, that when the prophet Samuel came looking for the next king, his own father didn't even invite him to the lineup. He was left in the fields alone with sheep and songs. But here is what is stunning. God saw him. And when Samuel finally laid eyes on this forgotten shepherd boy, God said, "People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." 1 Samuel 16, verse 7. David learned dignity, not in applause, but in anonymity, not in recognition, but in relationship. And that's where the self-worth is born. Not when you're seen by the crowd, but when you realize you've always been seen by God. David was also a warrior and worshipper. There is a giant on the battlefield, a nation too scared to move, and a boy who walks forward, not with armor, but with identity. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. 1 Samuel 17, verse 37. This wasn't arrogance, it was assurance. David wasn't trying to prove his worth. He was living from a place of already being known and called. And dignity doesn't make you loud. It makes you fearless. Not because of who you are alone, but because of whose you are. When you know God is standing with you wherever you are, there comes certainty. Years later, David becomes king, and you might think now he's finally made it. But David never saw the throne as the source of his value. One day, as the Ark of the Covenant returns to Jerusalem, David dances, unfiltered, unshamed, undignified. So much so that his wife criticized him. And David says, I will become even more undignified than this, yet I will be held in honor. 2 Samuel 6, verse 22. You see, David's dignity didn't come from public image. It came from private intimacy with God. He didn't lead with ego. He led with humility and joy. He wasn't afraid to look foolish because he knew who was watching. And then he fell. He failed. He committed adultery with Bathsheba. He orchestrated the death of her husband. It was devastating. And he could have used his power to cover it up. He could have let shame define him. But he did something rare. He repented. He cried out, not to save face, but to restore his heart. Create in me a clean heart, O God. Restore me the joy of your salvation. Psalm 51. That's dignity in brokenness. Not pretending it didn't happen, but trusting that even here you are not unloved. If you want to know how David truly saw himself, just read the Psalms. You'll find a man wrestling, rejoicing, weeping, worshipping. A man whose identity wasn't anchored in perfection, but in proximity to God. He said, I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Psalm 139. You stooped down to make me great. Psalm 18, verse 35. Who am I, Lord God, that you have brought me this far? 2 Samuel 7, verse 18. David's dignity wasn't self-made. It was God-given, God-sustained, and God-redeemed. David shows us something powerful. Dignity isn't about image, it's about intimacy. It's not found in titles, victories, or public success. It's found in being known by God fully and still called friend. So, whether you're in the pastor of the palace, whether you're on a battlefield or in the middle of breakdown, remember this. Your dignity is not earned, it's received. And it cannot be taken because the God who sees your heart also calls you by name. If this message spoke to you, if you found hope or healing in it, please subscribe and share this video with someone who needs this kind of encouragement. It's a simple way to support this channel, and it helps me to continue creating content that brings faith, psychology, and dignity together. Thank you for being part of this journey. God bless you.